ओम सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः. Today we are doing Kathopanishad and second adhyaya, second verse, 8th verse. Yayesha supteshu jagarti kamam kamam purusho nirmimana. Yayeshaha purushaha. This is how it has to be connected. Yayeshaha purushaha. This conscious being, this full being, this aham. Because when you say aham, what you feel within, that is Atma. What aham is, the body is called Yushmat Pratyaya Vishayaha, but it is interpreted by man as Idam Pratyaya Vishayaha. Idam is an interpretation, but what is experienced is Yushmat Pratyaya Vishayaha. Anubhava Rupena, it is Yushmat Pratyaya Vishayaha. Every objectifiable object is Yushmat Pratyaya Vishayaha. Aham is Asmat Pratyaya Vishayaha. And there is complete contrast between Asmat Pratyaya Vishayaha and Yushmat Pratyaya. You can address every object as thou, you. You can look at the space as thou, you, in contrast to aham, I. Thus there is a contrast between aham and you, between the subject and the object. And even senses are objectifiable. Eyes are objectifiable, perceptions are objectifiable, thoughts are objectifiable, emotions are objectifiable, and all impulses are objectifiable. Anything that is objectifiable, it has two phases. It becomes manifest and it becomes unmanifest. And their unmanifest state is inferred in the manifest state. This you have to understand. Unmanifest state is nothing but, say, when I open my eyes next day, it means I make an inference that they must have been unmanifest. Today they have become manifest. In this manner, every object has got two phases: manifest phase and manifest stage, and the unmanifest stage. And the unmanifest stage of the objects is inferred in the manifest stage. Otherwise, by going by experience, it is your presence free from their objects. In Sushupti, it is your presence free from the objects. But after waking up, from the waking point of view, from the manifest point of view, we call it as unmanifest state. But the unmanifest state is nothing but your presence free from everything. Yayeshaha, this full being, supteshu means when all the senses become unmanifest, supteshu. You call it as sleep, you call it as unmanifest state, you call it as laya, it means the same thing. Layeshu. Supteshu means layeshu. When they become avyakriteshu, jagarti. This full being, this purushaha jagarti. Yeshaha purushaha jagarti. The conscious being, aham, is awake, wide awake. It doesn't become unmanifest. If it becomes unmanifest, who has to register? It's an unmanifest state. And therefore, the one who has to register, the one who registers the manifest state of the objects and the unmanifest state of the objects, never becomes unmanifest. He is ever manifest. He is ever evident. Jagarti. Kamam kamam nirmimanaha. Purusha. Yeshaha purushaha. This conscious being, this full being, this Purna Purushaha, this conscious being, when all the senses, when all the thoughts become unmanifest, in the dream, the waking senses and the waking mind, the waking thoughts become unmanifest. Kamam kamam nirmimanaha. He as though he constructs every object, he creates every object, as though he creates. He doesn't create, he doesn't use his will. This is wrong to say. He creates. He finds himself with the dream objects. But it is said as though the Purusha, the conscious being, as though creates new objects. The word creation is in contrast to the eternal. It is not a process. It doesn't imply any process. It implies only you find yourself with the creation. You find yourself with the objects. You find yourself with the dream. And therefore you don't use your will to create. The conscious being doesn't use his will to create. And therefore, Purushaha Nirmimanaha Tadeva Shukram Tad Brahma. That the one who finds oneself, Aham finds itself in the dream, when all the objects are, when the waking senses, when the waking senses close, and when the waking thoughts become unmanifest, the conscious being finds itself dreaming. And to dream means as though it is to create. It as though nirmimanaha. Nirmimanaha means as though constructs the dream. And that conscious being itself is Shukram. It is Shubhram. Tadeva Brahma. And that itself is unlimited. That Aham itself is conscious being. The conscious being, don't imagine conscious being. You use the word Aham. And when you use the word Aham, what you feel, me, that me is the conscious being. Tadeva Shukram Tad Brahma, Tadeva Amrutam Uchyate, and that itself is eternal. That is unlimited and that is eternal. And therefore, as a conscious being, even though it finds itself creating, it finds itself with the dream, it's not really. Why does it look? Why does it feel itself to be limited? Because the body is limited, the waking body is limited, the dream body is limited, and therefore you feel yourself limited. Otherwise, there is no other reason why the conscious being, should feel limited. Therefore, yasmin vijnate sarvam vijnatam bhavati means when the aham is understood as not idam, as not yushmat pratyay vishayaha dehaha, then everything is understood as non-separate from aham. And aham as with which everything is non-separate is Brahma. Aham is Brahma. Aham Brahmasmi. It is said, Yajnavalkya uses the word Aham Brahmasmi. Brahmasmi means I am unlimited. Aham is unlimited. Aham is unlimited means Aham as not Deha is unlimited. Don't imagine, don't speculate awareness, don't speculate Atma, don't speculate about Atma. You use the word Aham, and Aham, whenever you use the word Aham, and what you feel is indeed Atma. Aham is Atma, and Aham, that is called Asmat Pratyay Vishayaha. And the body is Yushmat Pratyay Vishaya. You can always objectify the body. The body is Yushmat Pratyay Vishayaha. The body is idam pratyaya vishaya is an interpretation. If it is a closed, then it is idam. If it is a distant object, then it is others. This and that are interpretations of human being. But what is in experience is yushmat. That is why Bhashyakara uses the word for every object, yushmat pratyaya vishayaha. This body also is yushmat pratyaya vishayaha. Some people don't understand Yushmat Pratyaya Vishayaha. Yushmat Pratyaya Vishayaha means it is a total contrast between Aham Pratyaya Vishaya, Asmat Pratyaya Vishayaha, and Yushmat. When you say Aham and Idam, it is all right. If Idam means Yushmat Pratyaya Vishayaha, it is all right. The Deha is Idam Pratyaya Vishaya, call it Idam Pratyaya Vishayaha, or call it Yushmat Pratyaya Vishayaha. But it is in contrast to Asmat Pratyaya Vishayaha called Aham. And therefore, Tasmin, as non-separate from that Brahman, Tasmin, Lokaha, all these worlds, Tasmin, Lokaha, all these worlds, Shritaha, Ashritaha, are dependent. Sarve means all worlds, including the earth, including the space, air, fire, water, earth, and including the senses. the body, the thoughts, every perception, including the whole creation. The entire creation is non-separate from that aham, the atma. Aham, the atma. Aham is not ahankara. Ahankara is dehoham. When I say I am deha, when I feel I am deha, that is called ahankara. But ahankara is called nothing but aham being taken as, aham the atma being taken as the deha. Aham the atma being taken as deha is called ahankara. Ahankara vimudhatma karta ahamiti manyate. When a person thinks that deha is me, then every mobility is your mobility. If you are not deha, then you are not mobile. You are unlimited. And in that every world is non-separate from that aham. Shata sarve tadunatyeti kaschana. In fact, nothing can exist, nothing can go against, nothing can exist outside. Natu tadu natyeti kaschana. Natyeti means nothing can transgress against this self. Nothing, no finite thing, no object can exist outside. There is no outside to the truth. There is no outside to the truth. Nantaram, na bahyam. There is no outside to the truth, and therefore, in a way, we can say, independent of the truth, no object can exist. It is non-existent. That is why Brahmanaha Vyatirekena Tasya Abhavaha, Prapanchasya Abhavaha. Prapancha has no existence independent of Atma, independent of awareness, independent of Aham, independent of Brahma. And therefore, Sarve Tadunatyeti Kashchana. Etadvaitat means, hey Nachiketa, this is indeed what you asked. This is the answer for what you asked. And what is it that you asked? You asked, Ayam Preti Vichikitsa Nasti. So when a person dies, some people think there is something left out. Atma is there. And some people say there is nothing left out. Different views are aired. And for that, for that question of yours, this is the answer. The answer is Aham survives. Aham the being survives. Aham the being survives. The body goes, the body dies, the senses die, the thoughts die, but the consciousness, the aham doesn't die. The aham is Atma. The Atma doesn't die. And the aham as Atma, it becomes free from this deha, these senses, these thoughts, etc. But it can assume next body. And sanskaras are there. And this life sanskaras are there. And as per the sanskaras, it takes next life, it takes next body, next senses, next thoughts it entertains. And also it has the interest as per its sanskaras. And therefore, don't think that the death is final. Death is not final, knowledge is final. When a person is, death is not a liberation. Death may be a liberation from this body, but not the potential from the next body. The potential, the adhyas, the confusion is still there. And therefore the confusion has to be corrected. When you close your eyes to the snake is not gone. You may close your eyes to the snake. But when I come to know this is not a snake, this is rope, that is correction. But by closing eyes, you are not liberated. You may be liberated from that moment, for that moment, but you are not liberated from the potential for the next bondage. Similarly, here also, when the body dies, this body dies, these senses die, these thoughts die, but the aham remains. Aham, the Atma, remains. And therefore, the death is not the liberation. Death may be a liberation from this body, these senses, this mind, these labels, but it's not free from, it's not liberated from the potential for the next bondage, for the same truth, and even though we say it is for the same truth, the actual nature of the truth is that it's unaffected by what you think. Thought doesn't affect consciousness. Thought doesn't qualify consciousness. Thoughts, the aham's thoughts don't qualify aham. Even the man thinks that aham is qualified, but even then the aham is not qualified, the atma is not qualified. He may think that he is qualified, but he is not qualified. His conscious nature is something that remains the same, that remains unqualified by the thoughts. And therefore, tasmin lokashrita sarve, death is not the final solution. If death were the final solution, it's like saying closing your eyes to the snake is the final solution. It is not the final solution. Knowing that this is not snake, this is rope is the final solution. Knowledge is the final solution. Death is not the final solution. Sarve nadra, and therefore, when sadhunatyeti kashtan etadvaitat, and therefore, don't imagine that death is the final solution. And now, the next verse we are going to do, the next few verses we are going to do, they have the same examples. Agnihi, Vayuhu, Suryaha, these are all various examples. But human beings, they hear a lot of logic. Logic is not meant to correct the truth. Logic is meant to correct illogical thinking of man. We use logic to correct illogical thinking about man. Illogical thinking, wrong thinking. And Vedanta, the self-knowledge doesn't depend upon even logic. Nor can wrong logic can go against it. It is unaffected by logic or logicality or illogicality. It is something that is evident. The truth is, the conscious being is evident as you, and therefore, even though the human beings, having heard the logic, they think it is something to be logically understood. It is not to be logically understood. It is to be understood. Your existence is not logical inference, please. Logically understood means inference. You don't infer your existence. You know that you are there. You don't infer that you are conscious. That is, you know that you are there. And you know that conscious, as aham, you are all comprehensive is not inferred. It is a fact. And it is self-evident. It is to be understood correctly. It is not at all inferred. Truth is not to be inferred. Truth is not an object of logic, nor can illogicality can go against the nature of the truth. The logicality doesn't help you. Logicality only helps you to correct the illogicality in your thinking. But your self-evidence cannot be improved. You are self-evident, and self-evident means absolutely evident. It cannot be improved upon by logic. Your being conscious cannot be improved upon by logic. And consciousness being all comprehensive, the aham being all comprehensive, the aham being not idam, the aham being not yushmat pratyay vishaya cannot be improved upon. Asmat pratyay vishaya, not being yushmat pratyay vishaya, cannot be improved upon. It is complete. It is complete. The contrast is complete, like between the light and darkness, where Shankaracharya says, Tamah prakashvat viruddha swabhavayoho. Like light and darkness, they are asmat pratyay vishayaha and yushmat pratyay vishayaha. Aham and idam, the sharira and aham, they are in contrast, like the light and darkness. Wherever there is light, there is no darkness. And wherever there is no light, there is no light. Wherever there is darkness, there is no light. They are opposed to each other. In the same manner, here also, the light and darkness are not each other. In the same manner, the conscious, the aham and idam are not each other, but they are seen as each other. That is because they are not seen. They are not seen as not each other. Because they are not seen, they are not discerned, and therefore they seem to be together. And therefore, you don't have to infer your existence. You don't infer your nature as consciousness. You don't infer that you like happiness, you like fullness. You don't have to infer anything. There is no truth is not a matter of inference, please. truth is, we use in tad aviruddha tarka is used. Aviruddha tarka means Shruti aviruddha tarka, Shruti anugrahita tarka is used only to correct the illogicality of man's thinking about the truth. Otherwise, the truth is not to be inferred. The truth is self-evident as your existence. But yet, human beings are influenced by logic, and they always speculate about Atma. They always try to infer Atma. They try to logically think about Atma. Like subtlety, they think the subtlety is something. You have to twist your temples to see the subtlety. It is microscope. It is not objectifiable. The unobjectifiable is self-evident. Your existence is self-evident. You don't have to use any light to know whether you are there or not. A blind man doesn't have to use. A blind man knows his existence. A deaf man also knows his existence. A, a dumb man also knows his existence. Existence is not something that is self-evident. That is not something. It's not something that has to be inferred or speculated or logically inferred or logically speculated. There is no use of logic in the matter of the truth. You don't have to be extraordinarily intelligent in order to know the truth. In order to know the truth of your being, you should have common sense. The common sense is that that the asmat pratyaya vishaya, the aham is not idam. The deha is idam and aham is aham. And discerning between the two is what is called atma anatmanoho vivekaha. Atma anatma vivekaha. It is discerning between atma and anatma. Atma is aham, aham pratyaya vishaya, asmat pratyaya vishaya. Asmat means aham pratyaya vishaya. It is called aham, aham the atma. When you say that I am deha, that is called ahankara. Please see the difference between aham and ahankara. Aham the being, aham the atma, and ahankara is I am deha is called ahankara. And therefore, discern between aham the atma and idam the shariram. Bhagavan Krishna says, idam shariram kaunteya kshetramit abhidiyate. Etadyo vetitam prahu kshetrajneti tadvidaha. Those who understand the truth, they know they describe the one who is aware of the body, the one who knows the body. He is called kshetrajnaha. This body is called kshetram. Kshetra means anatma, and kshetrajnaha means atma. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. This kshetrajna is not the is as not as discerned from the idam, is me. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi. Understand me as nothing but kshetrajnaha. Understand the kshetrajna as unlimited. As you don't have to objectify the unlimitedness. You have to only understand, discern between the limited and your existence. You don't have to objectify the unlimited. You don't have to imagine the unlimitedness. That it is not the limited. Neti neti, naidam naidam. As discerned from the deha, it is unlimited. As discerned from the limited, it is unlimited. You can only and that is exactly what that is its swarupam. It is swarupam. As not deha, it is as non-deha, it is unlimited. And in order to tell the people, the Shruti gives examples. It is not something that needs to be understood through logic. It's not the truth is not something that is to be inferred. Your existence is not to be inferred. Your being conscious is not inferred. Your being only consciousness is not to be inferred. There is a contrast between you, aham, and idam is not to be inferred. The contrast need not be inferred. Nothing needs to be inferred. You have to only see what is said by the Shruti. The Shruti still gives the logic in order to show in order to correct the illogical thinking that you do. The speculation is illogical thinking, because what cannot be speculated, what is self-evident, need not be speculated. It's not that it can't be, it need not be speculated. It is self-evident. What is self-evident need not be speculated. And that is why he gives a lot of examples. Agnir yathaiko bhuvanam pravishtaha rupam rupam prati rupu babhuva. The fire enters, Agnir Yatha. Agnihi means the fire. Yatha just as Eka. The fire is one. It is hot. Bhuvanam Pravishtaha. Bhuvanam means where all Bhavanti Bhutani Asmin Niti Bhuvanam. Where all the creatures exist. All the jivas exist. This is called Tribhuvan. Bhuvanam Pravishtaha. All the three worlds are only, they abound in jivas. Jivatvam. Bhuvanam Pravishtaha. Just as the fire enters the earth, Bhuvanam Pravishtaha, Rupam Rupam Pratirupa Bhavuva. It always looks like the form of where it manifests. It looks like the form of a log. Supposing it manifests in the log, it assumes the form of a log. If it manifests in a rod, it assumes the form of a rod. If it manifests in a shell, it assumes the form of a shell. In this manner, the fire, it takes the forms. It takes the forms where it manifests. In the same manner, ekas tatha. In the same manner, the truth is one. Ekaha tatha. Sarva bhuta antaratma. Sarva bhuta antaratma means sarva bhuta antaratma. Antaratma means it is there as the aham. That is the antaratma. It is not the deha. It is taken for deha. It is not deha. When it is taken for deha, that is only a sheer perception. It is not. It is not a fact that it has become deha. Don't imagine that it has become deha. It has been perceived as deha. It is seen as deha. It is pratitihi. It is pratyaya, mithya pratyaya. It is seen as pratyaya. It is seen as deha. Sarva bhutantaratma. Rupam rupam pratirupa bahu. Pratirupa bhavuva. It has become, it assumes the form of the upadhi. If it becomes the, if it is seen as the human body, it assumes the human body. If it is seen as the tiger's body, a tiger's body, and it assumes that form of the tiger. It assumes the form of the mosquito. It assumes the forms of various jivas. But even though it remains one, and yet it is unqualified. Bahishcha, it is unqualified by any of the forms. It assumes the form of every deha, every jiva. It assumes the form of every thought, and yet it is not qualified by the thought. It assumes the form of every deha, every upadhi, but it is not qualified by any deha. It is not qualified. Even when it is thought qualified, it's not qualified. That is the most important thing. Even when it is thought qualified, even when you cry, you are not crying. By nature, you are not crying. You are crying only. You are crying, all right, but then that's not that the truth. By nature, you are crying. That is, you think that you are deha, and therefore you cry. Otherwise, as discerned from the deha, you can't cry. You are all comprehensive as yourself. You are all comprehensive. You are free from. You are unlimited. As unlimited, you can't cry. As unlimited, you can only be peaceful. In sushupti, you can't cry. In sushupti, in the dream, you may cry. In the waking, you may cry. But that is because you have taken yourself to be a deha. What you can discern from, that you have not discerned from, and therefore you cry in the waking and the dream. But in sushupti you can't cry, because you are free from all the deha, senses, the mind, intellect, etc. People think you don't see the world because You don't have the senses. I say, you are free from the senses, you are free from the objects. Your presence is there minus the objects. It means you are free from the objects. That is Advaitam. Sushupti is Advaitam. Sushupti is Advaitam. And therefore, you are free from the senses, you are free from the thought, you are free from the objects. And therefore, as free from the objects, as free from the senses, as free from the thoughts. You can't cry, even if you want to, even if you make a decision in the waking state before going to deep sleep state, that you want to cry, but you can't cry. And in the same manner, the cry doesn't affect the nature of the truth. You may conclude that the nature is affected, but the nature is not affected. That is why it is called a nature. The nature, even though you conclude that the fire is cold, but it doesn't become cold. Even if you conclude, even if you conclude that the space has horizon, it doesn't have horizon. Even if you think that the space has the roof is blue, the space has a roof, but it doesn't have a roof. Even if you think the sun is setting, it doesn't set. Even if you think that even if the sun closes its eyes and thinks that it is non-luminous, but even then it is not non-luminous. It remains luminous. It only closes it doesn't see its nature. It doesn't see its nature. The fire also thinks that I am cold. It doesn't see its nature, and therefore it feels it is cold. Otherwise, its nature can never change. The nature can never change. And therefore, even when you think, even when you are unhappy, by nature you are not unhappy place. Your unhappiness. Your unhappiness is a thought. Your unhappiness is a memory. Your unhappiness is a perception. It is a perception that you are deha. That is the unhappiness. Aham is indeed deha. Aham is not deha. Aham is not deha. Aham is separate from deha. And therefore, when you don't see that aham is not deha, then you cry. You are unhappy that because you don't discern between aham and idam, deha. The contrast is not seen. When the contrast is not seen, then you cry. But your crying doesn't change the nature of your being. So even if you conclude that it changes, it doesn't change. Just a minute, please. Thank you. Just a minute. And therefore, the fire, just as the fire assumes the forms of the logs where it appears, in the same manner, the consciousness where it manifests, there we can say the fire manifests. The fire manifests, it cannot manifest unhot. It always, that is its nature. The fire has to manifest in a log, and it assumes the form of the log. Pratirupa bhabuva. In the same manner, consciousness, which never becomes unmanifest, it is always evident. The aham is always evident. The aham is there in the waking, in the dream, and in the sleep. And the same aham is as non-separate, as separate from the deha. It is Brahman. It is Prapanchopsham, Shantam, Shivam, Advaitam, Chaturtham Manyante. It looks like Chaturtham. Manyante sa Atma sa Vijnaya. That what is to be understood is that aham is not there. That is all that is to be understood. You don't have to improve upon aham, please. Aham is already unlimited. You don't have to improve upon your existence. It is already existent. It is self-evident. You don't have to improve upon your consciousness. It is already conscious. You are already consciousness unlimited. You don't have to, you have to recognize, you have to only see the contrast between aham and idam, the deha. Aham and idam, the deha. The idam, it is interpreted as idam, otherwise it is yushmat pratyay vishayaha. It is thou. Just as every object can be addressed to you, the perfect contrast is there between aham and yushmat prati, you. Aham and you. Every objectifiable thing is idam pratyay vishaya. Call it idam pratyay vishaya because we are now used to idam pratyay vishaya. Idam, and the aham is called aham. And then for not discerning it, for not due to not seeing the contrast between the aham and idam, not because the contrast is not seen, and therefore man cries, man fears, man cries, man sheds tears. Everything he does only because he doesn't see the distinction between the aham and idam. When he sees the distinction, then that distinction makes him understand that the whole universe is himself. The Atma, the Aham, as not Idam, as unlike Idam, as not Idam, it is it is Brahman, it is unlimited, and therefore it only assumes the forms of the upadhis. It only and it doesn't have to be inferred, it doesn't have to be speculated, please. In the same manner, the next verse is also given. Another drishtanta is given because human beings are meant to imagine things, meant to, they always imagine things, they always speculate the truth, they always try to logically arrive at the truth, but then the one who arrives at the truth is the truth. The one who is the subject is the truth. Hamara Guruji used to say, the subject is not subject to objectification. I think that is the thing. That is, aham is not objectifiable. Aham is, when you say aham, and whatever you feel within, and that is atma, please. The I means the aham the I. I is the subject. I is the subject. And therefore, and then another verse is given, just as the akasha is something, it is all comprehensive, and yet it is unlike everything. In the same manner, aham is unlike everything, unlike the deha, it is comprehensive of deha. It is unlike the thoughts, it is comprehensive of the thoughts. It is unlike the every object, it is comprehensive of every object, like space. Vayur yathaiku bhuvanam pravishtaha. Just as Vayu enters this earth, bhuvanam pravishtaha, rupam rupam pratirupa bhavuva. It assumes the forms of where it is. If the air is there, if the air enters the house, then it assumes the form of the house. If it enters the pot, it assumes the form of the pot. Wherever it enters, it assumes the form. We say pot air, house air, etc. Ekastata sarvabhutantaratma. Tatha, in the same manner, ekaha, the one being, the one atma, as non-separate, as deha is one of the things, as non-deha is not, as aham as non-deha, as not deha, is not one of the things. It is ekaha, it is one. Ekastata, sarva bhutantaratma. It is the within of every jiva. The within of every jiva means, the within means should not be imagined, should not be speculated. The unobjectifiable. That is called sarva bhutantaratma. Rupam rupam pratirupaha. It assumes every form of the upadhi, it assumes the form of the upadhi, it assumes the form of the human upadhi, it assumes the form of the tiger's upadhi, it assumes the form of the mosquito's upadhi, it assumes the form of a bird's upadhi, it assumes the form of the cow's upadhi, a bull's upadhi. Different upadhis it assumes, but yet it is bahishcha, it is unqualified by any upadhi. It is unqualified by any upadhi. And therefore, rupam rupam pratirupaha bahishcha. Bahishcha means it is unqualified by anything. In the same manner, suryo yatha sarva lokasya chakshu. The sun is suryaha. Suryaha is the sun. The sun is lokasya chakshu. It is the eye of the world. In the light of the sunlight, in the light of the sun, you see things. सूर्यः यथा सर्वलोकस्य चक्षुः न लिप्यते चक्षुषैर्बाह्यदोषैः. It is not affected by, it's not affected by the chakshusha's doshas. If the chakshu is half sighted, it is squinted, the sunlight doesn't become squint. Chakshushaihi doshaihi na lipyate. The sunlight is not affected by the defects of the eye. In the same manner, ekastata sarva bhutantaratma. In the same manner, sarva bhutantaratma. Sarva bhutantaratma means sarva bhuta means all individuals. Antaratma means the inner being, the inner self of all jivas. The inner, the within of all jivas, eka, it is one. Tatha na lipyate. It is not affected by lokadukkhena, by the sorrow of the world. It is not that when you are not sorrowful, it is not affected. Even when you are sorrowful, even when you are unhappy, you are by nature you are not you are unaffected. Lokadukkhena, bahyaha. It is it is distant from. It is unaffected by lokadukha. Bahya means it is external. It is outside. It is unqualified by the lokadukha. Lokadukha doesn't become the dukkha of your nature, please. It is your dukkha. Your dukkha is born of thought. What is thought? That I am Deha is the thought. And it is only that not seeing the contrast. That's why it is said Atma Anatma Viveka Abhavaha. Not seeing not seeing the contrast between Atma and Deha is the reason for dukkha. Not seeing the reason between, not seeing the difference between, not seeing the difference between aham and idam, the deha, is the reason for loka dukkha. But loka dukkha doesn't qualify atma. It is not the dukkha of your nature. It is the dukkha of your dukkha within the wrong perception. It is bahya. Your nature is. It is external. It is other than. It is bahya means it is unqualified by your perception, by your misperception, wrong perception. What is the wrong perception? That I am Deha. Aham is Deha. That is the wrong perception. You don't have to do anything. It's not really difficult. It's not that something that it has to be understood after many lives. That's not true. Why don't you take it as this life, as the last life? Aham is idam. Aham and idam has to be discerned. Aham is you, Atma, and idam is Shariram, and both have to be discerned. Both have to be seen. See the contrast between aham, the Atma, and idam, the Sharira. And not seeing that makes you cry, loka dukkha. And that loka dukkhena bhakyaha. It is something that you by nature, your nature is something unqualified by this loka dukkha, by the world of the sorrow of the world. And the more of it we will see in the next class. Thank you very much. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Ji. ठीक है जी.